Hi friends, it's Katya. Welcome back to my channel. I love having a good cry. I feel like it can be so cathartic, and I especially love when a book makes me so invested in the characters and in the story that I feel emotional enough that it makes me cry. So today we're going to be talking about some sad, cry-worthy books, and getting into it right away, I want to start with the books that I feel like are the most obvious, the books that make a lot of people cry. So I'm going to start with Kristen Hanna. The Nightingale is a book that I read, I think either the year it came out or the year after it came out. It follows two sisters, Vianne and Isabel, living in France during World War II. I am such a sucker for stories about sisters, and I felt especially connected to Isabel and Vianne, particularly Vianne. I was reading this book in public when I finished it, and I could feel myself becoming emotional, and I told myself, don't finish this book in public because you're gonna cry in public, and I couldn't put it down. So I was sitting in the lobby of the student center where I lived at the time, and I just had to kind of like try to quietly hide my tears from the people around me. But historical fiction is almost always a really good bet for a genre that will make me cry. Another Kristen Hanna, very devastating, I think even more so than The Nightingale, is The Four Winds. This book takes place during the Great Depression era and particularly focuses on the Dust Bowl. So we follow a family who migrates from the Texas Panhandle to California, and they have quite a tragic path ahead of them. They're trying to escape both the havoc that the Dust Bowl has been wreaking on their home and also on their health. The son in the family has asthma, so it's just not feasible for them to stay in a place that is so dangerous for them, so they move out to California. And I thought that this book in particular was really educational in terms of me learning about the Dust Bowl in the Great Depression, because it's really not an area of history that I had ever been interested in learning about or had been interested in researching on my own. But reading about these dust storms and reading about the journey that this family went on was so just heartbreaking and fascinating, and made me so invested in the family. And because of both the things that happened to them and because of the relationships between them that we really got to see grow and change over the story, and because of the tragedies that they endured, but also because of the relationships between the characters and their connections and the way that I was able to see those grow and change over the course of the book. I do also think that this is a book that is kind of guaranteed to make people cry. This is a much more recent read, but Shark Heart, this takes place in a world where people can develop this disease where they will slowly turn into an animal. It's kind of random, people don't really know what causes it, but over the course of the book we meet many different people who have this condition where they'll slowly turn into an animal, and the animal that you turn into kind of dictates the rate at which you change. The beginning of the book focuses specifically on this couple named Lewis and Ren. They are newly married. I think they've only been married for like a couple of months when Lewis goes to the doctor and he is diagnosed with this disease, and we find out that he is going to be turning into a shark. It's the kind of situation where he is becoming less and less like himself and more shark-like and aggressive and dangerous as he changes. So the first year of their marriage is Ren grieving the loss of her husband while also trying to take care of him and knowing that she will have to leave him in an ocean and say goodbye forever. I thought this book was really beautifully written, so I think that contributed to the tears as well. And then besides focusing on Lewis and Ren's relationship as a couple, we also get to see some of their family members and the ways in which their families have been affected by this disease in other ways as well. Switching to a couple of nonfiction books, I do want to take a second to focus on a happy cry that I had because of a book. When I read The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green, I just felt so uplifted and so like optimistic about humanity. This is actually a collection of essays where the author takes just kind of random things about humanity or things that have existed in the time of humanity and reviews them. Like he writes little reviews and there's a star rating at the end, and I found it so entertaining. It talks about Diet Dr. Pepper, Canada geese, teddy bears, the internet, penguins of Madagascar. A lot of those topics might make it sound like the book is very silly, but I found it so wonderful that he was able to take seemingly kind of silly topics and find like a poignancy in them. My favorite essays in this were the one on Harvey, which is a movie about a man who hallucinates a giant rabbit, which is, it's so good, and I love it separately from this book. And then I also really liked the essay on Auld Lang Syne and the Yips, but like I said, it made me very emotional in an optimistic way, and this book also moved me to tears. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez is a romance that follows two people who meet because of a Reddit quiet thread. Emma and Justin bond over the fact that each of them have noticed a pattern in their lives where everyone that they date immediately after dating them will go on to meet like the love of their life, the person that they're going to marry. This makes them both kind of cynical and jaded, and they decide that if they date each other, maybe they'll be able to like break the curse and find the person that they're meant to be with afterward. It's kind of an outlandish, fun premise for a romance, but as the book goes on and as we get to know these characters and their backstories even more, it becomes apparent that they're both really struggling with things in their lives, and the way that they're there for each other and the way they're able to connect with one another is just really, really special and emotional, particularly the way in which Justin is so patient about everything that's happening in his life, but particularly with Emma. I thought both of these characters were so strong as people as well as characters, and being able to watch their love story and read about them kind of triumphing over the things that they were struggling with made me very emotional. I could not do a video about books that made me cry without talking about my favorite book of last year, and that is Betty by Tiffany McDaniel. This book made me cry in the first 5 pages because I was just so floored by the writing. The story itself is also sad. We follow a family in Ohio and they face a lot of hardship, and we follow them over many years. So it's a story of resilience and family, but more than anything, I was so enraptured by this writing style. I thought it was so good, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully reading more Tiffany McDaniel very soon. My current read has not made me cry yet, but I know that it's coming, so I want to make sure to include it here, and that is The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. I'm like 3/4 of the way through this book right now. We follow 2 boys, Elwood and Turner, but we mostly focus on Elwood. These 2 boys are at this reformatory school that they were sent to because they had been sentenced to go there after committing some crimes, although Elwood didn't actually commit any crimes. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, which kind of contributes to the tragedy of it. The reformatory school in this book is actually based on a real life school in Florida that didn't close until the 2000s that was investigated for abuse and maltreatment and murder of the students. And in this book, we really get a front row seat to the horrors and the dangers of living in a place like that. The writing isn't overly descriptive. It really doesn't make me feel like the author is trying to like tug at my heartstrings too much. It's just the situation that the characters are in that is so devastating and heartbreaking. But I really like the characters, and I really like the way that it's written, and the fact that I am already so invested in the characters makes me very nervous about their fates. Another book that made me cry because I was so angry at the circumstances that the character found herself in was Hurricane Summer by Asha Bromfield. This book follows a girl who goes on vacation to Jamaica. She's going to visit her father, who she doesn't see very often, and also going to see his side of her family because I don't think she's seen them in several years. She doesn't know them very well, and I don't want to get into too many spoilers because I think it would be so easy for me to spoil this book, but the way that she is treated, not only by her family, but also by the people who she thinks are her friends, is so upsetting and frustrating and angering in a way that made me want to like throw the book across the room. It evoked such a strong emotional response for me because I wanted so badly not only to throw the book across the room, but also to enter the book so that I could stand up for our main character. I also felt that way about Know My Name by Chanel Miller. This is a nonfiction that follows Chanel Miller, formerly known as Emily Doe, who was the victim in the Stanford Brock Turner rape case from several years ago. I think that Chanel Miller shared her story with so much grace and thoughtfulness and vulnerability, and more than anything, this story really illustrated her bravery in standing up for herself and going to court even though she had to navigate a criminal justice procedure that was making her relive her trauma and also was just traumatic in and of itself for her. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross is a fantasy following a magical war, and we follow our 2 main characters, Roman and Iris, who are both like rival journalists. This book made me cry because I loved the couple at the heart of the story so much that if there was even like a glimmer of a chance that something bad was going to happen to one of them or that they would be separated, I was like inconsolable. I remember listening to this audiobook and it had a little bit of a shocking cliffhanger-y kind of ending, and I was just sitting with my head in my hands, tears leaking out of my face because I just didn't want anything bad to happen to them because I cared about them so much. I also cried when I read Foster by Claire Keegan. This is a very quick little novella following this young girl who's in a family with many kids, and the parents are having a hard time taking care of everybody. So this girl is sent to live with some distant relatives for a little while, and we see them caring for her, but we also learn about their backstory. It's another story of family and resilience, which is just always going to be so moving to me. The movie is also very good, and the ending just like absolutely floored me. Why Fathers Cry at Night by Kwame Alexander is part memoir, part poetry prose collection. The poems in this book really moved me, particularly his breakup poems, and I think that was in part because at the time that I was reading it, I was also going through a breakup, but I just thought that his writing was so beautiful. He also recommends a couple of different albums and songs throughout the book, and playing those songs while I was reading the book I think really made for a special and immersive reading experience. My Dark Vanessa is such a beautiful, devastating, heartbreaking, special book. We follow our main character, Vanessa, on two different timelines, both in the present day as well as in the 90s when she was a high school student and had an affair with her high school English teacher. Now in the present day, past students of his and different women have come forward with allegations against him, and Vanessa has to reflect back on her past and the fact that she had always viewed their relationship as a really romantic one, and now she has to come to terms with the fact that it was definitely more predatory, and that is not something that Vanessa is happy to have to admit to herself or to anyone else. This story really made my stomach churn. It was another situation where I was so angry at the character, at the English teacher in question, and so heartbroken over the fact that Vanessa, even after so many years, never wanted to admit that she was a victim. She always wanted to believe that it was a beautiful romantic story, when in reality it was not at all, and it was just really devastating and tear-inducing to read. This next one was really popular the year that it came out, but I haven't really heard people bring it up since. Maybe that's because everybody's read it already, but just in case you missed it, I definitely recommend I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This is a memoir of Nickelodeon child stardom, but my favorite thing about it is the way that Jeanette McCurdy wrote about her relationship with her often abusive and manipulative mother with so much like nuance and grace. She does say in the title that she's glad that she died, but I feel like throughout the book she did a really good job of balancing a lot of complicated emotions about her parent. The whole thing is so thoughtful and so reflective, and I think I'll be really fascinated to see if Jeanette McCurdy writes anything else. What else she has in her. Next is The Wedding People. This is another book that made me cry because of its upliftingness, its happiness, its hope. It really starts on kind of a dark note. We follow a character who is going through a really difficult time and is contemplating suicide, but then she starts to meet people and make friends and form a found family, and it's really heartwarming in a way that, again, brought me to tears. Our Wives Under the Sea follows couple Leah and Miri, and at the beginning of the book, Leah has just returned from a very dangerous deep sea mission where she was only supposed to be gone, I think for like a couple of days, and instead she was gone for months. Miri is so relieved that Leah's back, but when Leah comes back, she's acting very strangely. She keeps staring at the water. She keeps dumping salt into all of the water that she drinks. She'll randomly start bleeding from her eyes and from her gums. And every once in a while, Miri is convinced that Leah's skin looks translucent. As the story unfolds, it's all very unsettling and also so quietly sad. It creates a real feeling of like haunting and unease. I really liked the theme in this book of what it's like to grieve someone who is still with you. I thought that about Shark Heart as well, but that is Our Wives Under the Sea. The last book I'm going to talk about is The Sky is Everywhere. This is a young adult novel by Jandy Nelson that again follows sisters. We're going to start with sisters, we're going to end with sisters, because stories about sisters are always going to make me cry. This book follows Lenny, who is dealing with the very sudden death of her older sister Bailey, and in her grief connects with Bailey's boyfriend. This is another book where the writing was so moving and poetic and visceral. Jandy Nelson has a very like aggressively metaphorical writing style, and I don't think that that's for everyone, but I think in this book in particular, it really contributed to the emotion emotion and made me feel what Lenny was feeling, and I think that that was so powerful. All right, those are all of the books that I'm planning to talk about today. I'm sure that there are lots of other books that have made me cry, but we would be sitting here for hours. I hope that if you read any of these that you'll enjoy them. Let me know if there have been any books that have made you cry lately, or like what book has made you cry the most in your life. I know a lot of people talk about A Little Life. I am so scared to read that. I think I read a little bit of it and I couldn't finish. Anyway, all of that is to say thank you so much for hanging out with me and watching this video. I really appreciate you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell to be notified of the next time I post, and I'll see you in my next video.